Hey there, before we dive into my story, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment to let me know your thoughts. I'm Emma, and I'm 42 years old. I've been in this marriage for 12 long years, and I spend my days crafting delectable pastries in a bakery. My mother was an exceptional cook, and from a young age, I'd often linger in the kitchen, watching her work her magic. She still reminisces about those days. When I started school, she took me under her wing, teaching me the art of cooking, and together, we'd whip up sweet treats on special occasions. From that point on, baking became my passion. I pursued culinary school and eventually landed a job at a bakery I'd admired for over 2 decades. I've poured my heart and soul into this career, and I had hoped to continue for the rest of my days. However, being a pastry chef takes a toll on the body. It demands long hours of standing and wrestling with heavy pots and pans. For the past 3 years, my back has been giving me grief, and lately it's only gotten worse. Standing has become excruciating, and there are days when I simply can't make it in. As the head pastry chef, taking a day off burdens my younger colleagues. Emma, don't push yourself. I'll handle it, they'd say. These coworkers are a godsend, quick learners who ease my load. On the flip side, there's David. He shows no empathy for my ailing back. Where's breakfast? You're making me late, he'd grumble, even on days when my back has me bedridden. He doesn't express concern or offer a helping hand. He'd even come to our bedroom, prodding me to hurry up for breakfast. Sorry, I can't get up. It hurts. Could you grab something from the store? I'd ask, but he'd only sigh and leave for work. I met David in my 20s at a local pub. Our chance encounters grew more frequent until he became the center of my thoughts. One tipsy night, I confessed this to the bar owner, who orchestrated a meeting for us. After a few drinks, we became an item. David, 3 years my senior, works in insurance sales. Initially, he was charming and incredibly chivalrous. He'd listen to my worries without a hint of impatience. During our courtship, he was considerate, always putting me first. However, after marriage, he grew distant and cold. I suspect it's because I persisted in my career as a pastry chef. When we wed, David suggested I switch to a job with more flexible hours, allowing me to be home more. But I couldn't abandon the work I love. I strived to manage household chores, ensuring my job didn't shoulder the blame. I consistently contributed my share of living expenses, as agreed upon at marriage. Yet during busy periods like Christmas, when work consumed me and the household chores piled up, David would question, "Are you okay with the mess? Is this job really worth the trouble, considering your meager earnings?" Despite my joy in my work, quitting was never an option. I love what I do. I've told you this countless times. I retort, my voice resolute. I rarely challenge David, but when it comes to my career, I can't help but defend it, even though I know it strains our relationship. Since we married, he hasn't even tried the cakes I've made. I've offered them after dinner, but he's never shown interest. One day, crippled by back pain, I couldn't rise from bed. I had to call in sick and attempt to get to the hospital when Grace, my mother-in-law, appeared. "Is David off to work already?" "He's always so responsible," she chirped. Grace lives the short drive away and often stops by around breakfast time. She and David share pleasant conversations before she leaves. Today, alone and ailing, I couldn't prepare breakfast, and David had left early to pick up groceries. Grace, much like David, disapproved of my career and never missed an opportunity to limit our childless state. Each time we met, she reminded me of our lack of children. Frankly, I'm not fond of Grace, especially when David's around, as he's the one engaging her in conversation. I'd rather avoid her as much as possible. I took the day off. My back's killing me. I plan to head to the hospital soon, I explained. We've been hearing this for years, Emma. You clearly don't care about family. You can't even have kids. You're a lost cause, she fired back. I wanted her to leave, but my pain was too much to argue. I had no choice but to feign a smile. Grace used to work part-time at a dry cleaner a few years back. My goodness, people are always quick to praise my mom's multitasking skills. They adore her, the epitome of a perfect mother. "Oh, Oh, how I wish I could take revenge and show them a different side of me. Every time they utter those words, their judgmental remarks slice through my heart like a vengeful knife. It's not fair, you know. Comparing my part-time job to David's full-time work is like comparing a gentle breeze to a raging storm. From his perspective, what Grace does seems utterly ordinary. Even on days when I come home utterly exhausted from work, I muster every ounce of strength to tend to the household chores. But it's as if my efforts evaporate into thin air, never reaching their consciousness. David is one of 3 siblings, and their family of 5 was always a lively bunch. I bet David secretly longed for a family like that, and I suspect Grace yearned for grandchildren. It's not that I didn't want children. For years, I underwent fertility treatments while juggling work responsibilities. But alas, we never had the joy of parenthood. However, Grace conveniently places the blame solely on my job. Since David isn't here and being around Emma only irritates me, Grace declared, "I'm going home." She left, visibly annoyed. I chose to keep my mouth shut and simply bid her farewell with an indifferent, "All right, see you later." As I escorted Grace out, she was only present for about 10 minutes, but her mere presence, coupled with my aching back, left me utterly drained. Later, I visited the hospital for my back, and the diagnosis was grim. My condition was in terrible shape, and it seems I'll have to endure countless treatments. At this point, continuing with my current job feels like a daunting challenge. I can't keep burdening my company, but in one way or another, I yearn to continue working with sweets. I confided in some trusted individuals around me, seeking solace and advice. Of course, I knew discussing it with David would be futile, so I chose to remain silent. A few days later, I made a grand announcement that I would be bidding farewell to the bakery where I've dedicated countless years of my life. The shock on my colleagues' faces was priceless, and their pleas for me to stay touched my heart. Deep down, I loved my job, and tears welled up as I explained that I couldn't continue burdening them. I had future plans to pursue. For the remaining month before my resignation, I promised to work tirelessly, all while keeping a watchful eye on my deteriorating back condition. And indeed, I pushed myself harder than ever during that month. There were days when the pain was unbearable, but I mustered the strength, motivated by a burning desire to prove my worth. Each passing day reaffirmed my unwavering love for this job. The farewell party and my last day turned into an unexpected emotional roller coaster. I left with a bouquet of flowers and a collection of heartfelt messages. Upon arriving home, I mustered the courage to tell David that I had quit my job. "I've quit, David," I declared. His shocked expression spoke volumes. "What? Why did you quit? And why didn't you consult me?" David had always secretly wished for my departure from this job, yet he remained indifferent. I never believed he would truly listen, even if I had consulted him. "You know my back has been in terrible shape," I explained. "Standing and working have become unbearable. You've been saying you wanted me to quit, right? For now, I plan to focus on treating my back and taking care of the house. Perhaps it's time for a change in jobs. But I never said you should quit." David's concern for our living expenses finally surfaced. "How are we going to handle our expenses?" he asked. "We have some savings, so we'll manage," I replied. "Well, if you can handle it, fine. I'm going to bed," David said, nonchalantly retreating to his slumber. Not a word of concern for my back or any acknowledgement of the years of hard work I put in. Anger surged within me. The following day was David's day off, and as I prepared breakfast, Grace barged in unannounced. "Emma, you quit your job," she exclaimed, as if David had informed her beforehand. Surprised by this revelation, I confirmed, "Yes, that's correct." And then she had the audacity to say, "So you're unemployed now? As if you weren't useless enough, now you're even more useless." The audacity. I couldn't let her insulting words slide. "I'm just focusing on my treatment for now." "Calling me useless is incredibly rude," I fired back, wondering why she had to be so cruel. Our voices escalated, and David, disturbed from his slumber, joined the commotion. "Man, it's noisy this morning." "You're jobless. Don't talk back," he interjected. Consumed by fury at David's words, I couldn't hold back. Why do I have to be spoken to like that? I'm just not working right now, I retorted. David refused to back down. The problem is that you're not working right now. Normally, you secure another job before quitting your current one, he stated, his words fueling my anger even further. Grace chimed in, blaming me for my back issues. It's your own fault your back is bad, Emma. With no income, you should leave. Just like Mom said, give us your severance pay as compensation. It became clear that talking to them was pointless. Frustrated, I made a bold declaration. Fine then, let's call it a divorce. I exclaimed, throwing the half-finished breakfast into the trash. I swiftly gathered my essential belongings and walked out of the house, paying no heed to their continued banter. Why did they have to berate me so mercilessly just because I decided to quit my job? I had given my all to both my work and my family, yet they never showed an ounce of concern when my back began to fail me. When did things go so wrong? Tears streamed down my face as I walked away, my destination far from my parents' house. In my despair, I reached out to my best friend Sofia, a former coworker, and arranged to meet. Revenge was brewing in my heart, and together we would plot our next move. I stayed at her place for a few days, apologizing for the sudden intrusion. There was no need to cry. She hadn't done anything wrong. I encouraged her to vent about David and Grace as much as she wanted. Sophia, my dear friend, comforted me that day, just as she had done in the past when we were married. We spent the afternoon chatting and sipping our drinks. What puzzled me the most during our conversation was the viciousness with which David and Grace had attacked me for quitting my job. Sophia couldn't comprehend it either. No matter how much I pondered over it, their behavior made no sense. But I knew that once the divorce was finalized, we would become strangers. So I decided to expedite the process and start anew. When I went to deliver the divorce papers to David, he annoyingly pressed, "Are you going to give me your severance pay as compensation?" I found it absurd that I, the one who had suffered, should pay compensation. Fed up with prolonging the conversation, I finally agreed, thinking that the severance pay was a small price to pay. I handed over the envelope containing the payment. Later, when I went to deliver the money to Grace, she immediately checked the contents of the envelope. "You worked all those years, and that's all the severance you got. You were useless until the end," she complained. It left a bitter taste in my mouth. But on the bright side, I felt relieved to no longer be a part of that family. The divorce was finalized, and I became a single woman again. I rented a cozy apartment and embarked on my new life. After 2 peaceful weeks, even my persistent back pain seemed to vanish. I was excited because my preparations for a new job were starting the next day. I couldn't wait. As I got ready for an early night anticipating tomorrow, my phone suddenly rang. It was David. "Hey, Emma, I'm really sorry. Can we start over?" His voice sounded completely different from when we divorced. I couldn't believe my ears. "Don't be ridiculous. There's no way we're starting over," I exclaimed, filled with vigor. Then, from the other side of the line, Grace's voice chimed in. "Say that again," she said. "Grace, I know you're listening. I have zero intention of starting over. Goodbye." I curtly ended the call. It piqued my curiosity a bit how the attitudes of these two, who had said such horrible things to me, had changed. But I had work starting the next day, so I pushed those thoughts aside and decided to get some sleep. The next day, when I arrived at my new job, to my surprise, David and Grace were there. David seemed genuinely sorry and confused about what was happening. I stood there bewildered when George, my former father-in-law, appeared. "Emma, I'm sorry you had to find out like this," he said. It turned out that George's company was opening a new bakery, and I was chosen to lead the development of the shop and its products from scratch. I had heard about this opportunity when I was contemplating the divorce. David responded, "That's why we got divorced," to which Grace gleefully added, "Divorcing unemployment, Emma was the right choice." Upon hearing this, George's face turned to a mix of surprise and anger. "You two don't know a damn thing. I've asked Emma to lead our new business venture." "What do you mean useless?" "What do you mean unemployed?" George's response clearly caught them off guard. He sent David and Grace away, and we began our meeting. Starting a store from scratch was a new and exciting experience for me. Just having this planning session got me really excited. Later, I found out from George that David and Grace had started investing a year before our divorce and had accumulated a significant debt due to their failures. I had left the money management to David, who used our living expenses for our day-to-day life, while also using his own salary for additional ventures. Grace had started working full-time later on. George returned the severance pay I had given him. I've been so busy with work that I couldn't notice what was going on. Whenever they said they needed money for living expenses, I just gave it to them without questioning. Maybe I've been too indulgent, George said, looking regretful. No, I was the same. I was so engrossed in my work that I didn't notice anything. But I'm really glad I caught on this time, I told George, grateful for his apology.